Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to this reading for the new moon in Gemini that we're having on the 26th of May, which is on Monday, around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So actually, if you are in the UK, it'll actually be on Tuesday, very early in the morning. So again, depends on wherever you are in the world, then that will denote what time of day and what day in general it's going to happen for you. Anyway, as always, look at where you have this new moon in your personal chart. How is it affecting it? How is this transit affecting your natal chart? Where do you have 6 degrees of Gemini and 6 degrees of Sagittarius? 6 degrees of Virgo and Pisces are also going to be affected. But yeah, this is kind of a very, very busy new moon. We're going to talk about the astrology first. We're going to do the horoscope first, and then we'll jump into the cards and see what the cards have to say. So this is probably going to be a longer reading. Put it on in the background while you're driving, while you're cleaning, whatever, in order to listen to it, because it is going to be me rambling for a bit. There's so much going on, which is kind of ironic because it is Gemini. And Gemini being ruled by Mercury, little Hermes, both indicate a lot of the need for stimulation, the need for movement, the need for information, the need to socialize, the need to sort of be like the fly on the wall and the butterfly. More like, actually, not really the fly, but more like the butterfly. Because Gemini has this beautiful way of transforming itself as an archetype. And you don't often see, I mean, you might see it more than any other sign with Gemini and Virgo, because Mercury is the closest to the sun, but you do have this Mercury Cazimi at the same time as this new moon. So Mercury, again, ruling Gemini. So now you got this moon's ruler being conjunct, which I think adds a layer of, well, interesting information, right? But it adds a layer of power that we wouldn't have, again, with really any other sign besides Virgo, because Mercury is the closest. You have a half square over to Venus with this new moon, and you have a trine over to Pluto. Like, that's just with the new moon itself. There are other aspects going on in the chart that's just so much to talk about. You have a trine with Venus and Mars. You have a square that's applying that square, that very intense square that's going to be applying between Jupiter and Saturn, and Jupiter and Neptune. Because again, Saturn and Neptune are getting very close. And I know I keep bringing it up. That conjunction is going to be the most significant thing. But Saturn's going to go retrograde before it happens exact, which, yeah, you can go to the major astrological events tab of the channel if you want to listen to me rant about that. I won't go all over into that. Now you have an interesting conjunction also that's applying between Venus and Chiron. So Venus is catching up to Chiron, all in Aries, right? I think that's the key here, just because we got to look at two things. We got to look at what Mercury's doing, because it rules Gemini, but we also have to look at what Venus is doing, because she's got this half square over to this new moon. And she's making a trine over to Mars. And she's making that conjunction with Chiron. And then Mercury is making a sextile to Saturn and a conjunction with Uranus and a sextile over to Neptune. Although they are separating, I think the most significant thing is that sextile with Neptune, because it's the closest. So I just threw out a bunch of stuff. I can't ignore the fact that Mars is making a square over to Juno, and Venus is making a quincunx over to Juno. So interestingly enough, now Gemini is one of the archetype signs of relationships, right? Usually Gemini is relationship with your friends, relationship with your siblings. Those are more important than anything. It's not really romantic relationships. But the fact that we have so much going on with Venus and Juno and Mars, like, it could be romantic relationship stuff that comes up with this new moon. So it is really the information and the knowledge and the gathering of all that when it comes to relationships, because it is Gemini. And again, because the ruler of Gemini, being Mercury, is also going through so much at this time. I mean, Pluto's obviously retrograde right now, and we're leading up to all the transaturnian planets starting to go retrogrades, including Saturn himself. So I think a lot of the information and a lot of the wisdom that we're going to gain, a lot of the things that are going to be moving around, all these puzzle pieces that are going to be falling into place with this new moon are going to be setting us up for this retrograde period. And yeah, while I want to go into each individual aspect, I think we'd be sitting here for an hour and a half talking about that. So I know I said it's a longer video, but it's more because I also want to pull cards. So I think I'll just keep talking about the overall energy that I'm seeing with this. It's almost like so much is happening. You know how sometimes so much happens that nothing happens at the same time? I feel like that's what this new moon is. You're not going to get a lot of like tangible stuff because so much is changing and shifting so quickly, especially with quick energy like the moon and Mercury. And even Venus herself, she'd be the second fastest. This stuff is gonna happen so fast that we might not either we might not pick it up, right? We might not see it because we got so much going on, or we might reject it. We might turn it down because it just seems insignificant, or it seems like it's too much to handle, or it seems like it might require too much to do. It kind of reminds me of the scene. It's in a very old movie, and I hate to say that it's considered an old movie, but it's George of the Jungle. All right, when George has coffee for the first time, that's this new moon. Okay, look up that scene, because it's like Java 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 Java. It's like so many aspects between all of these gods that it's almost like a overstimulation. And Gemini, as an archetype, when it gets overly stimulated, can shut down, or it can make mistakes, or if it's overstimulated, it can manipulate other things in order to gain back control, to gain some sort of grounded footing, because Gemini will just keep going and not realize until it's forced to stop. So I feel like all of these significators, again, more specifically Mercury and Venus, and I would even include the fact that because you've got Juno and Mars being affected by Venus, I think all of these factors coming into play really only lead to the biggest one, and that's the fact that this new moon is making this trine over to Pluto. So, and Pluto again is retrograde and in Aquarius now, really moving through Aquarius, which is another, you got the three, right? You got the air signs are the relationship signs. So Aquarius is the relationship with the world in general. Aquarius is the relationship with humanity, right? So you have this power, this intense power, almost like a power struggle, I would think, because you've got the lesser benefic of Venus, and then you've got the greater malefic of Pluto. So those two energies, I think, kind of make us have this push and pull, or this power struggle within ourselves of good versus evil. And I know that sounds like crazy, but it's like the dream, the beautiful dream that Venus wants to create towards the horrific nightmare that Pluto can bring in. And not that they're making a relationship to each other, because they're not, but they are making a relationship to this new moon. So this new moon in Gemini, which is already hyped up, right, is already over caffeinated, has had way too many monster energy drinks, I think can get distracted by one or the other. And with the shadow side that comes with Venus, you also have the positive side that comes with Pluto, right? Even though Venus is traditionally the more positive, again, because she's the lesser benefic here, she's more positive natured, she can have her shadow, and just like Pluto being the greater malefic can have the positive side of it, because destruction can be beautiful and can be inspiring. Rebirth, right? Transformation, these are all powerful things. Power itself, because power can be good or evil, right? You can have good power and you can have evil power. And Pluto's coming in, I think, and stepping in and giving us all of that information, and helping this Gemini new moon get us to this beginning, because it is a new moon, right? It's that fresh start. When you have that new moon, though, you can't see it, right? You look up in the sky and you don't see it with your naked eye. So there is the natural shadow that comes with the new moon that Pluto might be, kind of coaxing along for us to look at what we haven't looked at, to think about it. Not really. Now, I know that Gemini as an archetype is about looking and through the eyes of whatever we want to look at, but Gemini is a thinker. You think about the thinker, like the sculptor, I can't think. Ironically, right now, it's funny enough that I can't get my thoughts through my mouth right now. You think about that statue, the thinker, is what I'm trying to say, right? That's Gemini. So constantly thinking about it, and again, not just Gemini, but Libra and Aquarius, those three relationship signs and those three signs of thinking. Now, that's funny because there's not really anything going on in Libra, and the only thing going on in Aquarius is Pluto, but you got all this stuff going on in Gemini. So the overthinking aspect might come in, because the overthinking might be, I just want details and I want information. I don't care what information or details it is. Whereas Libra and Aquarius might be more fine-tuned about what kind of specific information and details we could be getting. So you kind of need that Pluto and Aquarius energy making that trine over to this new moon in order for us to focus, right? So that we can understand more about those details, and we can also pick and choose what details we want to look at. And again, it's about our power, our self-empowerment, but the power that we give to relationships and the power that we give to our mind, right? Because it is, again, Gemini, but it's also that trine over to Pluto while this conjunction with Mercury is happening with this new moon. So it's our powerful mind, and looking at the effect that the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way that we perceive life has on our life. And I know that sounds, obviously it sounds obvious, right? Like, well, if you have this terrible perspective on your life, then you're going to hate your life. But if you have this positive perspective on your life, then maybe you'll feel a little bit better and you'll think a little bit better about your life, or you'll be a little bit more grateful, or you'll be a little bit more optimistic rather than pessimistic. So a half square over to Venus while this is all going on can kind of make us look at our those relationships. It's not a significant aspect, it's just a half square. But I feel like half squares kind of lead up to those full squares where, well, literally they do, but they make us feel a little bit of that itch. It's not like an intense friction that you would feel with a square. But a half square is kind of like a little bit of an itch, And again, it helps us focus, because this Gemini energy with all of this going on is going to make us a little bit distracted and jumping all over the place, kind of like I am with this horoscope reading, like I do all the time. I'm constantly jumping all over the place. So I apologize, I swear. I have a point here. A half square will funnel it down. And it will say, I know that your foot and your knee and your elbow itches, but doesn't your elbow itch more than the other two? And then, like, you ever do that? Like, you ever notice if you focus on one part of the body, and if you hyper focus on it, you can feel a little bit more than you would normally, like, because your awareness is so much on it. So that's what this half square does. It puts our awareness just a little bit more on our finances, on our relationships, especially romance, on our relationships with friends and siblings, because it's Gemini. But also, it puts the awareness on beauty, and how are we bringing more softness into our life? How are we bringing more art into our life? And do we look at life in a very awe-inspiring and art-inspiring way? Like, do we look at life like a blank canvas that we can create something beautiful out of it? Do we look at life as a good time, Because Venus just wants to have a good time. She wants to enjoy the finer things in life. Or do we feel like we don't deserve it? Or do we feel like we don't have enough money? Or we feel like we're never going to find love? Or do we feel like it's just impossible in one way, shape, or form? That Pluto, that trine over to Pluto says, look, there are some tough things in this world, but I will show you that it can happen. Again, this is leading up to that full square between Jupiter and Saturn, and that conjunction with Saturn and Neptune. So you got to think about how this is all leading up. Now, I really just want to quickly touch on, and I know they're not considered significant. But for me, I do look at Chiron and Juno. And the fact that, again, while all of this is happening with the relationship between Venus and the new moon and Pluto and the new moon, you've got this relationship between Venus and Chiron and Juno. And having a conjunction with Chiron and a quincunx over to Juno, when we're looking at romance, or really, let me just put it this way, maybe it's not just romance, but the relationship that we have with any person, place, or thing, because Venus can also represent places and things, and then Gemini can represent places. So when you have a conjunction with Chiron and a quincunx over to Juno, you look at those marriages, right? What are you married to? Who are you married to? What place are you married to? And Chiron gives you that key. Chiron gives you that answer that Gemini is searching for. So the answer to all of that can kind of come in maybe a little bit sporadic, a little bit hectic, a little chaotic, a little bit, again, all over the place. You might miss it and have to come back to it, maybe when Mercury goes retrograde. But it's presented to you. And that quincunx, look, you see how I always think about it this way. The quincunx looks like a picnic table, right? The symbol here, let me highlight it, or at least put my mouse on it. The quincunx symbol right there, right? Looks like, actually it's probably better to see it the actual chart itself. Looks like a little picnic table. So when you think about a quincunx, it literally tables that idea. You can have it. It's there. It's a resource for you to use, or you can just leave it on that table. So quincunxes, I think, bring up resources. Now, they bring up it in an uncomfortable way, right? They don't bring it up in a way that's like, oh, here it is on a golden platter with flowers. No, probably not. It's more like, here it is in a tub full of, bugs. If you don't like bugs, you got to kind of reach your hand in there. It's like Fear Factor. That's the picnic table. It's like Fear Factor. And Pluto brings up those fears. So it's kind of ironic. It's like, are you ready to face those fears? When it comes to what are you married to? Are you ready to face those fears and accept the answer as well? Because sometimes we're looking for the answer, and Gemini's going to dig for that answer. But then when we get that answer, we might be afraid of what we find, and we might be in denial of that acceptance, and we might not want to accept it, right? So keep that in mind. All right, let's get into the cards. All right, let's see what's going on. What do the cards want us to know about this new moon in Gemini? On 26th. It's new moon in Gemini. Guilt. I release any beliefs that no longer assist my soul's growth. And I love that it's this spiral. Because for me, now I don't know really too much about alchemy. I started to read up on alchemy and the occult and Hermeticism, and honestly, a lot of it kind of just felt overwhelming, so I put it back down. But if anything, I would feel like a spiral would be a Gemini trait. I don't know why, I just intuitively, I feel like a spiral would be something very mercurial, at least. Maybe not specifically Gemini, but maybe very mercurial. And I'm just getting that sense of like learning how to not spiral down into guilt. Maybe that's the information that we get, how to release guilt, how to not feel responsible for guilt too, because sometimes we get into these moments where the guilt itself feels like we should carry it, or we have to carry it, or if we're not honest with ourselves and we try to ignore that guilt, then we're not really a good person, right? So yeah, so we're kind of letting go of these beliefs that we should feel, well, why? Let's get why, right? Acceptance. Again, okay, see, so I was saying the right thing there. I'm learning to accept the things that I cannot change. Yeah, and look, it's like a flowers, which I think flower symbolism might be more towards Venus than anything, but accepting. Now, it's not saying that accepting that guilt can't change, or the belief systems of guilt can't change, but maybe it's accepting that, some things are not for us, or they are for us, because there's also that other side of it, right? Sometimes we can't seem to accept the fact that something is good for us, or that we do deserve it, or that we're worthy of it, right? So acceptance, yeah. Again, a lot of information might come up, and I already said that we might be in denial of it. Let's see. What else for this new moon in Gemini? passion, the soul. Again, Gemini represents the mind and thinking, but also represents the eyes and seeing. So I feel like maybe if a passion does come up, it's definitely attributed to that trine over to Pluto and that half square over to Venus. So I think that the passion, what we might be seeing is the passion that we haven't seen before. We haven't become aware of it. Look, I said the butterfly, right? Gemini is very, very much for me the butterfly. The social butterfly, if anything. But yeah, so the passion that we might have ignored in the past, or a passion that we might have not had access to for whatever reason, because sometimes things happen because we don't live near it, or we just haven't had the time, or because we're not working the right job, or we're not in the right mindset, right? So sometimes passions just aren't available to us until they become available. So with this new moon, what we're getting is these new passions and seeing these passions for what they really are. And I feel like I need to make that plural. I feel like it's not one thing. It feels like it's multiple passionate things that can come up with this new moon. All right, what else? No. What else? Let me get one that's actually, that feels right. This new moon in Gemini. Okay. Animal. That's funny. We got this animals card for, what did we get this? Oh, the Saturn and Aries reading. But companionship, yeah, companionship makes sense. Again, if you watched the horoscope part of this reading, we talked about that a lot. We talked about the relationships that we have. I think if it's a companion, though, it's a very symbiotic relationship, right? It's a very harmonious, very mutual relationship, because a companion you can look to for support, and they can look to you for support and love. So when you're looking at companionships, I guess these two cards together, it's like seeing and becoming more aware of these companions, right? Seeing them for what they really are, seeing the truth of them, and seeing the truth of how you are a companion, right? But also the companionship with the soul. Maybe your relationship with your soul. Your relationship with spirituality. How are you your own companion? There's always that. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize this came out. That's a funny power. Volcanoes. I'm not surprised to see this again, because that trine over to Pluto. Pluto's retrograde. The only planet that's retrograde right now. Leading up to all the other planets being retrograde soon here. I'm getting the sense of like this passion being ignited, like exploding like a volcano would. But you gotta remember, like I gave that reference point. I gave a few reference points during the horoscope reading of this video, but it's a lot. And think about a volcano erupting, because it's so much going on. When a volcano erupts, there's a lot to deal with, right? And it's a lot of heat, which is interesting, because I'm really, really focused on the fact that, like, lava, obviously, and magma is the hottest thing on this planet. So, when you have passion like that, while it's beautiful to look at and it's amazing to look at, it can be destructive, right? So I think that the message here is to just be aware of that, to be aware of the fact that passion can explode, and it can be very powerful. But again, kind of like I said with the horoscope part of the reading, it can be powerful for good or bad, right? It can be powerful for good or evil. So looking at that power that you give to companionship, but the power that you also give to your passion, and the power that you give to your soul, and not having guilt there, and acceptance needs to come with it. Yeah, so those are good together. All right, ooh, this deck wants to talk, clearly. Let's see what we need to know. All right, 3 of Pentacles. There's that companionship again. 3 of Wands. King of Pentacles, Ten of Swords, Four of Wands, Seven of Wands, and bottom of the deck, the Nine of Swords. Yeah, not surprised to see that. You know, Gemini can be attributed to that. The overthinking, overstimulation. So in the background energy, what we have is anxiety, worry, tension, and stress with this new moon. We have so much going on in our mind. Like I said, you're going to feel like you're crazy on Monday. You're going to feel like my mind can't stop. But maybe more so than other days if you naturally have that anyway. But yeah, it's going to feel like you can't stay focused, or it's going to feel like you're a little bit distracted with so much happening and so much information coming in. So we might not sleep the best on this new moon. But I feel like because this is the energy of the background, first of all, it goes with the guilt and shame, because Nine of Swords can indicate that, and the Ten of Swords can indicate having actually more so the Ten of Swords than anything. Hold on, I gotta pause. Okay, so yeah, the Ten of Swords being more guilt, and it's the shame of I've done something wrong, right? That's why the swords are stabbed in the back there. And she's carrying that sword because she feels guilty and responsible and ashamed of what she has done, or what she has thought that she has done. That's the key there too, right? Because sometimes we think that we did something negative, or we said something negative, or we thought something negative. But in the end, it's actually just all made up. It's all in our heads, and it's not really that much of a big deal, or it's over before it even gets started, you know? But the Ten of Swords is a very difficult card to deal with. So the fact that we have the 10 and the 9, I think, kind of sets the tone for what we are expanding on, for what we are clearing, because it does look like we're conquering a lot. It looks like we are facing a lot of challenges with this new moon, like I already talked about in the horoscope as well. But these challenges, we are going to be able to overcome them. All right. These challenges are here for us to face them, to face those fears, and to face those adversities, and to face those shortcomings that have been holding us back. Because what we're really doing with this Three of Wands and this Three of Pentacles, we really are expanding big time. We're looking out towards the horizon. We're trying to see what we can manifest. We're trying to see what our future holds. We're trying to look again at those companions. We're looking at those friendships. We're looking at those partnerships that can be mutually beneficial. We're looking for, literally, it's funny because in this Three of Pentacles, for me, it's the marksman getting the contract, right? It's someone seeking you out and saying, look, you're good at this, or we're good together, or, you know, we can do something pretty big. We can accomplish something really awesome and have success there. So relationships again can come in. Now the King of Pentacles definitely gives us the information that we really need in a very practical, very realistic way, because the King of Pentacles, like I always say, hard work means something to the King of Pentacles. It's not for a lack of trying. Like, we get to where we need to get to with this new moon by trying, by putting in the effort. Yeah. But there's also that aspect of the power of not just work, but the power of the mind and the power of words, which we talked about. Now, this Four of Wands, kind of interesting that this has come out. Especially with all this energy about companionships. And its partnerships. Again, you see that they're creating this beautiful energy together. They love each other's company, obviously, and they feel very united, and they feel very aligned with each other. And I know that the Four of Wands is traditionally, it's kind of circulated around YouTube as being the 1111 card. And Gemini is 1111. So Gemini is also that relationship, I think, that we get the information. Well, I mean, Aquarius is more the relationship with the higher self. But I think that the higher self is also something that we need to talk about, because the higher self is our ultimate companion, right? That's our ultimate partner that we need to look towards. But for me, Four of Wands has always meant that spiritual foundation, that spiritual strength, the spiritual stability that we don't find with anything else because it's spiritual, right? So spiritual stability. I'm making myself laugh here. Spiritual stability is the most significant thing that we can acquire. So if we're getting information about spiritual stability and how to do that in a very practical, realistic way, how to put in the work, actions speaking louder than words with that King of Pentacles. So it's not just about talking about it, it's about being about it. It's like this new moon is saying, are you going to accept, right, doing it now? Like you've already thought about it. You've already had your mind on it. Now it's time to focus and put your head down and really think and work. Yeah, all right, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this helped. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.